alerts and join our private investor club. Sign up for free by going to legacywealthcollective.com. In this episode, we'll be covering a variety of real estate investing news items, including Dave Ramsey pushes back against dead American dream, Las Vegas cannabis hotel hits market again, and San Francisco home listed for $488,000, but buyers can't move in until 2053. Don't forget, if you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, you can share your thoughts and questions during the show, and we can comment back. All this and more on this episode of This Month in Real Estate Investing. Let's start the show. All right. Our guests today turns out to be one guest, John Kasman. We also had Ed Matthews lined up and Jen and Stacy Conkey, but they are MIA. So we'll put them on our blacklist, I guess. Normally I say in that order, why don't you share about yourself and your background, what types of investing you do. So John, hit us.
Hey, with James, look, I'm excited to be here. I just talked to Ed not too long ago and had him as a guest on my show, so I was hoping he was going to be able to join, but hopefully he can join us here in a little bit. But yeah, man, listen, as far as my background, I came from corporate America. I spent 15 years in marketing and advertising, working on big brands like Coors Light, Nike, Mountain Dew. I was at General Motors. And through that time, my companies went bankrupt twice. I was at GM when we went through bankruptcy. And then I was working at an agency that also went through bankruptcy. So through those experiences, I realized I needed to take more control over my financial future. That led me to real estate investing. Fast forward, today we syndicate. We partner with everyday professionals to invest in large apartments, and we've invested in over $125 million worth of apartments. So that's what we do, and excited to work with other people to help them get financial freedom and a little more flexibility for their own goals, dreams, and aspirations.
Well said. That's awesome. We have a kind of a similar background. I was a graphic designer and a copywriter, publisher for 25 plus years.
Oh, wow.
And just got to a point where I'm like, this isn't getting me where I want to go necessarily. And as a freelancer, most of those years, or contractor, I'd say. So I had clients, but yeah. And I had gotten job offers to kind of get back into the corporate W-2 thing a couple times. They wanted me back. I'm like, no. And guess what? Those jobs went away a couple times. So real estate.
It's tough, man. It's tough. I mean, and that's the business, right? Is especially in the creative world. Like I was just reading something the other day, and it was saying that, and I was in Detroit, I was at General Motors, and I always felt like there was pressure, so much pressure to deliver, right? The whole city, needed GM to perform. And when you were on the agency side, you felt that pressure as well. And I just read something that General Motors in particular, and I think other companies, they're moving some of their creative services outside of Detroit. And that's a big blow for the Detroit advertising community because they really rely on those jobs. And it, quite frankly, is one of the things that I started to see the writing on the wall, like, ooh, more and more companies are bringing work in-house, or they're outsourcing things, or they're really cutting you down on your fees. So it was like, at some point, I'm going to get pushed out of this industry, whether I like it or not. It doesn't matter how great I am. Someone's just going to be like, that dude makes so much money. Get rid of him. We could do 3 people who can do that same job. So I'm like, we better take more control. And again, that led me to real estate.
Yeah. I was seeing that too. Like my big client was Gates Corporation, belts, hoses, in the automotive industry. And they had an agency that they'd set up down in Mexico. And, they were going to them first, unless they needed some more high level stuff where I was cost a lot more, so writing was on the wall.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, hey, let's get into real estate So let's start with our first news item from CNBC. What to expect from the housing market in the second half of 2024, according to real estate experts. And John, did you get a chance to read at least the summaries on all these?
I skimmed it a little bit there, so and definitely
Okay.
went in detail and a little bit more in some places. But I always find it interesting when we talk to experts about housing market predictions because um, some people are so smart that they miss some of the basic and obvious things. And in this case, I would say when we think about what's happening in the market, um, I think demand is still strong. There's still a lot of pent up demand. Again, one of my neighbors just listed their house, and I mean, they had people just all day in and out taking a look at it and got their asking price. My sister is a local real estate agent here, and there's still strong demand, at least in these parts. So I think the market is strong and will continue to be strong. And we know that there's such a housing shortage that there's demand that's been pent up. So I'd be curious to see what actually does happen in the marketplace. But my thoughts are I do expect it to remain strong through the rest of 2024.
Yeah, definitely seeing it soften here. A lot of agents, I'm also a real estate agent, they're starting with high listing prices. They're sure they and their sellers who are often dictating what those agents list at are kind of thinking back when it was a little higher. So, but I keep seeing like everything I've looked at, because I'm looking at moving to Colorado Springs, everything's had price reductions. They're just starting high. But there's more stuff coming on the market. It's still strong though. Like there's getting offers. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, James, I think this is probably a good point, a good time to point out that, whenever you're looking at these national reports, you got to keep in mind that all real estate is local, right? So
Totally.
I'm in the Midwest, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm telling you here,
Yeah.
we don't have as much new development or a gluttony of new product coming online. So we
Mhm.
are seeing supply, whether it be residential or even, commercial multifamily, we are seeing a lot of supply come online now. But in some of these markets, it doesn't matter because demand is still outpacing it. On the
Yep.
national level, supply is starting to outpace demand. But again, it depends on what market you're in. So in the Midwest, we're not seeing it just because we haven't really caught up to that demand. We don't have developers who are just, really hoping everything goes up. Typically, you're going to see the market move a little slower here, which again, when you're heading into a down market, that's actually a good thing if you're in the Midwest. So it completely makes sense why you and I are seeing different things in our local markets while we look at kind of these news headlines.
Yep. Totally. Yeah, I think in that article they're kind of saying experts were divided on where it
Yeah.
was going. So that could be because they're in different markets and whatnot. So,
Yep.
all right, let's go to our next one. From Commercial Observer, Related, that's a company. Related sells 321 West 44th Street at $103 million loss. So, I guess it's they're talking about a 10-story, 220,000 square foot office building at that address. So it's a 67% drop. It says that's a big drop.
It's incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible. Now I will say this, we just talked about how I believe, residential is still strong, and particularly multifamily.
Hmm.
Office, on the other hand, I mean, they got a big problem on their hands. So, I mean, a 67% drop in value is just wild, right? To think about buying this property, someone's selling it at a loss. So this is not just like, oh, it's sold for less money than before. No, they lost $103 million on this deal. Can you imagine losing $103 million on a deal?
No.
That's just incredible, right? Incredible. So I think it definitely shows not just softening, but almost a crumbling of where the office sector is, particularly in the urban core. We go back to real estate being local, but again, when you have these major companies who are taking these losses, it's something definitely to keep your eye on. And we're seeing this across the board when it comes to urban, right? So large cities where you have these large tower offices, they're devalued. I read a similar article about another property. I forgot what city it was in, but a similar story where they bought it. It was being sold at like a 60 or 70% discount to what the buyer bought it for. I will tell you this too. What's starting to become an opportunity is for people to do conversions for some of these office buildings. I know there's at least one property in Chicago, downtown Chicago, right on Michigan Avenue, where what they're pitching is to take this office building and actually convert it into a mixed use hotel and condominium. And that could create opportunities because I think there's still people and still demand for folks to live in the city and live in the excitement of a downtown of a big city. But again, that demand for office just seems to be dwindling away a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty much every month we have an article about this, and like this article talks about office to residential conversions. There's challenges to that, but like these owners are scrambling to figure out what to do, or whoever comes in and buys it at a discount then converts it or whatever. So there's opportunity in there, but yeah, there's some stress in that space. So, all right, let's move on to the next one from MoneyWise. Quote, honey, it's always been expensive, unquote. Dave Ramsey pushes back against the notion that the American dream is dead for young people. But do the numbers support his thesis? That's a long title. So he's claiming that housing has always been expensive. And he highlighted, I'm just going to read some of these notes. He highlighted that low income jobs have historically been insufficient to afford a home. And he points out data that in 1980, the median home value was 8 times the minimum wage earner's annual income. But now it's 7 times the median income. So it has gone up. It's gotten harder. So what do you think, John?
It definitely has gotten harder. I think looking at price alone is really a mistake, though, because I mean, there's the price of the asset, price of a home. You can look at income, and certainly that tells one story. And I completely agree with that. You know, it certainly has gotten harder when you look straight there. But there are a lot of programs out there to help first-time homeowners, right?
Oh, yeah.
One is the FHA program, which you can get, and again, last time I checked, you could put down as little as 3.5%. So you're talking about somebody being able to buy maybe a $300,000 home and putting down around 10,500. So affordability is kind of relative. You know, if you're looking to buy a house and buy a $300,000 house with just $10,000, I think most people would take that and say, okay, I can make that work. So yes, I understand the median income and all of that, but I would also say we've got to learn to adapt. You know, things have changed. You have a lot of different ways of earning income and living situations. And I think part of the issue, and this is particularly for the folks who are looking to get that first home, you've got to figure out what adjustments you can make to your lifestyle to make it work. You know, I know you're out there in Colorado, so a lot of people might house hack and truly live in a house and rent out bedrooms in that house. That's exactly how I got started. My wife and I bought a 2-unit building. We lived in 1 unit. We rented out the other unit. So there are ways to get in and make it work. I think your average person who does not want to be a real estate investor and does not want to deal with tenants, maybe a little bit more challenging, but there are programs available that can help people get started.
Yeah. I hear of different ones because I talk to a lot of lenders in the rent-to-own space. I'm always hearing about something different that they're like, we could do this. And with rent-to-own, like we always look at it like it's a backup option. If they can get a loan now, great, you know. And I have a lot of cool conversations with lenders talking about, you know, maybe you don't have the ability to get a loan and house hack, like have other people rent, but maybe you could go in with a buddy or multiple. I think you can go up to like 4 unrelated people or something. And everybody is starting their home ownership journey together with one house, you know. I love those kind of creative ideas.
I think the other thing, the article digs a little bit more into the numbers, right? And they start to break out like, okay, hey, here's how much a barista made, in 1980s or whatever the case would
Yeah.
be, right? They get into affordability. But again, I think one of the other things that they kind of miss in this conversation is also just like, well, what did it actually mean to buy a house? Like you go back to the 80s and people tell you where interest rates were, right? They were in the teens to buy a house. So it's
Mhm.
not like today where we're like, oh my goodness, 6% interest rate. This is great. Like they were paying 15, 16, 17, 18% interest rate
Yep.
for these homes, and they had to save 20% down or 25% down. So it's a different environment when you think about affordability. I mean, people truly used to save for years to buy a home. You had to get help from, your parents or grandparents. And like, it was a whole process. You didn't just wake up just one day and save a couple checks and go out there and buy a house. Like you had to go through a whole process and plan for it and work together as a family unit. And I think there's
Mhm.
this, this shift now where people, young people particularly, they don't recognize the hard work that has to go into things, and there's almost a sense of entitlement that these things should be easy, right? I should just be able to go out there and buy a house. And for a lot of people folks before us, that just wasn't the case. So it's a bit of a rude awakening, but I do think there's some premise and some truth to the fact that it really has always been expensive. Maybe not so much the purchase price compared to the median income, but when you consider how much someone actually had to save to make that initial down payment and get into a property or get into that first home, it's always been a bit pricey.
Yeah. 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 My partner that I run the Magnus team here, she's from Mexico, and was telling me about how much more they have to put down. Like lending isn't even, it's not as much
It's
of a
not an
thing like
option in some
here.
countries.
Yeah.
Lending it doesn't exist in some countries. I think I was in Jamaica, or it might have been Jamaica, and our driver was telling us that like there are no like bank loans here. Like you borrow from family members. So when you're driving through, you will see homes being built in stages. You have the first floor done, and then you
Mhm.
see kind of the post put in or steel beam for the second floor. But that's it, because they got to save the money, and they'll get to that in 6 months, right? And they'll build one room. So, again, we're a little privileged as Americans when we think about some of these things, but in a lot of different countries, they don't even have the options based on the way their banking system works or maybe their government works. So we do still have opportunities. It just may require you to be a little bit more creative and a little bit more resourceful.
Yep. Yep. Totally. Well, cool. Let's go to the next one from Fox Business. Real estate expert defines housing market doomsday, something we, quote, haven't seen in our lifetime, unquote. Why do you laugh?
I feel like every year we hear someone say something, just outlandish like this, right? Like there's supposed to have been some sort of doomsday scenario, at least since 2016, since I started investing. And I've heard these experts start, saying these kind of things. And this is now in context, you described the headline, right, as the person from $1 Million Listing. So maybe in the ultra luxury space, that may be true. So I think we do have to keep it all in context, because that ultra luxury space is a whole different, it's a whole different animal than what most people are going to experience with their homes. So I just don't like the sensationalism of, something we've never seen in our lifetime, doomsday scenario. Like, listen, man, even a broken clock is right twice a day, but I don't know. And for folks to think they know is just ridiculous. And we invest in large apartment buildings. We spend a lot of time understanding economics and talking to experts and all these things. And the truth of the matter is, even with all of that intelligence, all the data we go through, all the reports we read, we can only make, pretty good guesstimations based on that information. And for someone to predict this doomsday scenario that we've never seen, I'm pretty sure we've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah. Might be slightly different, but the recipe's the same. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Why don't we take a break and learn from one of our sponsors?
If you're listening to this, there's a good chance you work within the real estate investing industry. There's another good chance that you would like to increase the sales of your products or services. Well, you're in the right place. United States Real Estate Investor is a platform you need to place your brand directly in front of your target audience. With our focused, growing audience of real estate investing beginners, enthusiasts, and seasoned professionals, you can continually reach our captivated viewers and listeners with ease. To learn more or to get started today, just visit UnitedStatesRealEstateInvestor.com/advertising. That's UnitedStatesRealEstateInvestor.com/advertising. Get ready to increase your brand awareness and your bottom line. Attract clients with content.
All right, let's get back to the news. And John, are you seeing the chat on the side there? Click on the private chat. It's kind of separate from the public one. All right, so the next article from New York Post. Zillow hacker lists couple's home for sale by owner for $10,200. A hot mess. So just a little background. So in Kansas City, there's a couple with $1 million home. Somebody grabbed it and listed it on Zillow for $10,000. So it was a fake listing, and they were claiming it was for sale by owner. To first-time home buyers as part of a tax write-off. So somebody spotted that and let them know what was up. And then Zillow shut it down, obviously. But anyway,
it's kind of crazy that someone can even do that, right? And I mean, scammers they're getting so creative with the scams. I mean, picture this, man. Just picture being that couple. You know, you're at home, people are showing up trying to see your place. You're like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And you get alerted to this scam that's going on. And I can only imagine the frustration and anger that someone would have. And then on top of that, you hope, and I don't recall, but in the article, but you hope no one actually wired money. And to give the audience a little bit more context, this is a scam someone does, right? Because they're trying to get someone to pay cash, right? They want someone to wire money, wire deposit, try to lock this thing up because it's such a sensational, outrageous deal. Why don't we go ahead, wire this guy $10,000 or a deposit, whatever it is, so that we don't lose out on this can't miss opportunity. And it goes back to that old saying, right? If something's too good to be true, it probably is. Good kudos to Zillow for being able to take this down. But on the same note, I think it goes to ask more questions, right? What's that process like? What do you need to do to fully get your listing approved? Because you got to add in more complexity. And I'll tell you this, I've heard of this kind of same scam that people try to do in the residential apartment game, where they will list something for rent and try to get people to come by and get a deposit and do the same thing too. That's pretty common. So to take this to the home selling arena, is definitely an interesting angle these scammers are taking, but times are clearly desperate for a lot of these people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the wire transfers.
What are your thoughts on that? I mean, when you read that, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, initially I'm just like, wait, 10,000 versus $1 million? Like, obviously that's a scam, right? And I see the rental version of that all the time. So yeah, they're stepping it up, going for $1 million homes. But yeah, the wire transfer thing, that I hear stories all the time. Even going through title companies, but they're having to double verify and stuff now because people will I don't know how they do it with fake emails, maybe change one letter and it looks like it's coming from the title company, stuff like that, which is unfortunate. And
it's interesting.
I'm hoping crypto.
Zillow talked about. No, I was just saying Zillow, they have a statement on their site where they say there's an article which gets into beware of scams. And I don't know. I mean, it's great to have that as a helpful piece, but on the same note, you hope that's not their own way of just CYAing, right? And just saying like, hey, we told you, watch out for scams because again, you're always gonna have some unsuspecting people who fall for these things. There's a new movie coming out. I think it's coming out this summer, and I don't remember the name of it, but the preview I saw was of someone's grandmother who gets scammed. Have you seen this preview?
Mm-mm.
It's someone's grandma who gets scammed. She it's like a kidnapping thing or something like that, and she wires this money frantically to get it over, and then the person she was looking for calls, and she's like, "Oh, you're okay." And it's like, "Yeah, what are you talking about?" And then she finds out that she's been scammed. So the whole plot of the movie is her trying to get back at this scammer, and she's like, in a retirement home, and but the whole movie is her plot to get back on this scammer. So it's interesting how far these scams have come and go, and obviously there's a lot of a lot of pushback for that companies need to have, and I hope that platforms like Zillow and any platform that shares sensitive information are doing everything they can to protect would-be suspected victims.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, I think crypto and blockchain could help alleviate some of these things, especially with the wire transfer stuff. We'll see, but there's always going to be scammers, desperate people that are unscrupulous, trying to figure it out. It's unfortunate, but got to keep our head on a swivel. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Antonio, our producer, said Alina Herman may be joining. She's been on the show before. She's one of my favorite humans, so hopefully she can jump
I
on.
love it.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's go to the next news item from MoneyWise again. Quote, "This is just outrageous," unquote. "South Florida condo owners are dumping their homes after getting slapped with six-figure special assessments. And now the once hot market is floundering." So I just heard of that happening here in Denver with a buddy of mine. Got some crazy increases, mainly from taxes and insurance going up. That's going on everywhere. We're getting hit with that on a couple of our properties. So
Yeah, those special assessments, man, they're tough. And when you own a condo, it's one of the things that they kind of gloss over, but man, that can catch up and just bite you in the butt, right? And to your point, taxes and insurance are the two culprits that are really impacting most people. And you're talking about South Florida, so you've got hurricanes that have happened, and these insurance companies have been getting crushed. From everything happening, you've got hurricanes and wind and water, rain damage. You have tornadoes that have ripped through kind of the Midwest, mainly in like the Oklahoma and Kansas type markets. You have some flooding in some markets. We saw a lot of that in Atlanta and New Orleans not too long ago. You have wildfires that are taking place more in California. So these insurance companies who are insuring these different policies across the country, they have been writing some really big checks over the last few years. And in order to combat that, because at the end of the day, make sure you understand, it's always business. Those insurance companies looked at their bottom line and said, "Ooh, right, we need to make more money. We got to charge higher premiums to all these people."
Yep.
So they have shot up just insanely, and I don't know the single family and condo space, but I know in apartments, I mean, we typically would find something for, say, $300 or $500 per unit for insurance. So if we're buying a 100-unit building, your insurance would be about $500 per unit, right? So about $50,000. Well, now we're seeing that shoot up so drastically where instead of it being around $500 a unit, it's like $3,000 per unit or $2,000 per unit in some. So almost, one of 4X or 6X on a lot of these deals. And picture, just waking up one day and your insurance company telling you, yeah, your premium is shooting way up. And you're like, wait, what? And that's what's happening here, across the board. So they're getting hit, and who knows what's going to happen to, South Florida and those condo owners, because Many of them haven't planned on this. They don't know what to do. And now if you can't meet that requirement for the special assessment, that starts to erode all your equity and just so much more value that you have as a condo. So it's a really tough break. And, hopefully there's some ways for people to fight that and at least understand what their options are.
Yeah. I just got an earful. And Alina Herman just joined. Alina, awesome to have you on.
Hey, kind of last minute notice, but it's okay. I'm here on the island actually,
What island?
in Washington Island in Wisconsin. So
Oh,
you can see. So that's why I'm available because, pretty much just sitting here chilling. So
nice.
happy to join you guys, have a conversation.
Great.
What's on the agenda? Sorry, I just
Oh,
since it's last minute, I didn't get to check in, but I'm happy to, talk on any subject, real estate,
cool. Yeah, I'll just
Well,
read
Lena, it's
off the
good to
news
meet you on
items.
my end. I know James knows you, but it's great to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Awesome.
Cool. Well, we were just talking about some major special assessments on some condos in South Florida. Talking about that.
I've heard about that. Yes, I've heard about it. It wasn't that related to the one that's collapsed. So now that they're going to have a little bit more of an oversight over a condo association, right? Wasn't there one that had a pool leaking over the years and then collapsed?
I'm not sure if that's
That's
this
what I've
one.
heard from somebody. I talked to somebody in Florida, and they said that now, after the disaster, they changed the special assessment laws in Florida just because there has not been an government oversight over association and maintenance, and that resulted in casualties after that pool was kind of like oozing and leaking over the years, and it deteriorated structure, and then that I don't remember where exactly, but it basically building collapsed. So now they have a requirement
Yep.
to have those special assessment and have the maintenance done on a more regular basis, somewhat required maintenance. And that
Yeah.
would result in
Yeah.
special assessments. Which,
Yeah.
speaking
And then
of
James,
which,
just
I just was going
I
to
was just
add
going to
one
say
more thing.
to provide a little context to what you were saying there is that you're right that came from that collapse where 98 people were killed when that condo building collapsed, and Florida's really been tightening up on that. And in this particular case, where this article is, this special assessment is to raise another $30 million
Yeah.
for renovations they feel the property needs. So it's certainly not a small assessment. It's a huge assessment. And the way that trickles down for this couple, they bought this place for, I forgot how much it was in the article, but I think they bought it for like 600,000 or something like that. And they now have to put in again six figures for
Yeah,
their portion. They bought this for just under
134,000.
500,000. They bought this for less than 500,000 in 2022, and they put 100K into renovations, and on top of that 100K they put in, they're not going to have to pay a special assessment that they just list as six figures. They don't give an exact amount, so
Yeah,
definitely a
134,000.
huge undertaking.
Wow.
At least with this other one. Yeah.
This is why we own a real estate brokerage here in Illinois area and Chicago area. Maybe I should probably give a little bit more of a context of what I do or what I've done over the years, but I'll give right after this one. And that's why I tell all of the people that come over to us and looking for investments, and I want to buy investment condo in Chicago. I say, well, investment and condo cannot go in the same sentence, because it's either condo or it's an investment. That's either or. The reason for that is because investment is when you have somewhat a control over the instrument. If you don't have control, then it's a gamble and it's essentially speculation. It's kind of like you buying a stock at this amount, you're hoping it's going to go up, but it may go down. So that's a speculation. Investment in my world is when you have somewhat a control, at least you can forecast or predict or do some kind of math or calculations of what that is going to be. And if you just gambling on it going up and down, that it's a speculative instrument, that is really not an investment in a way, because of the special investment, because of the boards are really volunteers that have no idea of budgeting. They do not have any idea of maintenance, how to schedule that maintenance, and so on. So just being, aware of the fact that you essentially entering into something you have zero idea what it's going to be. A lot of people just gamble on those things. I stay away from condos as much as I can.
Yeah, we do too, like in the rent to own space. That's kind of on our no-go list, So to go down the rabbit hole a little bit on insurance, which some of these assessments are covering, right? I just got an earful from a gal last night at a meetup that we put together, talking about MGAs. It's an insurance term, managing general agent is what it's called. And I can't really explain it, but it's I'll try. So it sounds like in Florida, as an example, like we had insurance and they threw up their hands and we had to go find different insurance. And so there's like these small insurance companies, not like a State Farm, which I don't even think they're doing insurance in Florida. A lot of those big ones have pulled out. So it leaves all these kind of scrappy small insurance companies. But I guess they'll kind of pool together under like an MGA, I believe is how it's done. And that the MGA basically shows that they have really thin margins. And so if there's like a storm that comes through and wipes out everything, they basically say, well, we had these thin margins in this kind of shell company, I guess you'd call it. And so they just, at some point they're like, oh, we had thin margins. Like we can't make our, pay out. And that screws all these homeowners. So yeah, a little bit of a rabbit hole thing I need to learn a little bit more about. But have you guys heard of that structure?
No, but that sounds like another speculative, thing, but from a fun perspective, they're collecting premiums and then they're just going to, leave somebody else hanging.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't heard as much about that. I do know folks who have created or are familiar with that space more, and they do it typically for their own portfolio. And I don't think you were implying this, but the folks I know haven't done it intentionally to deceive their holders, because they're the holder, so they're not doing it that way. But I wouldn't be surprised to learn that, hey, there are groups out there who are really focused on that aspect of it. I will tell you though, I heard a story from a guy, and Alina, you're out in Chicago, you may know him. It's a guy named George Newberry, and George is a Chicago guy. And I had a chance to meet George at an event. He's got a crazy story, but the crux of it is he was an investor and he had an $11 million property in Columbus, had a huge hailstorm that came through, and he filed a claim to get it through. The hailstorm caused a lot of damage. It was a hailstorm, it was a snowstorm. It knocked out of power, flooding, tons of work. And it might've been $11 million in renovations, but either way, huge renovation bill. He goes to the insurance company and they drag and string him along for probably a good year or two. And ultimately they wind up not making the payout and he loses his property. So I've always been a little apprehensive when it comes to those insurance companies, if they're not a reputable firm, if they don't have a proven track record of kind of paying out, when you have those claims. And it's tough, especially when you have the market damage, like again in Florida with the hurricanes and so many other things that are taking place, it's tough. So you definitely want to make sure you have the proper coverage, whether you are just getting it for your own personal residence, but especially when you're a real estate investor, you have to make sure that you have the right insurance provider, you have the proper coverage, you understand loss of business income, you understand the difference between replacement value and replacement
Yes.
cost, because they are not the same. And you don't
Yeah.
want to be surprised one day when you look at your policy and realize you had replacement value and not replacement cost. And all that means is, you buy a property, let's just say it's worth $1 million, just to keep it simple. Great, it's worth $1 million. Well, in 2024, if you were to rebuild that property, if you had to rebuild it due to fire or something else, it's probably going to cost you more than $1 million to rebuild it. And if you have replacement value, they're only going to give you $1 million. So you wouldn't even have enough money to rebuild this property. So just understanding these nuances are absolutely key if you're going to be an investor in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think that's very few people understand that terminology. And we find it a lot because we do a lot of flips and, at the moment. And then we also get a vacant property coverage because most of the insurance don't even have that um, as an option. And this is so important
Yeah.
because most people are thinking, oh, I have insurance. Let's say they have a tenant that moves out, but then after 6 months, most insurance companies would consider it vacant and they say, oh, it's vacant, so our policy is not going to cover you. So I
Mm.
think it may be actually less than 6 months. I could be like in a weeks. It's each company would be different, but it's so important to know those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah. We were looking at short-term rentals in Corpus Christi, Texas, and I got to talking to a guy that had one there. And, that hurricane hit, wiped out Houston too, and some stuff happened in Corpus. Ed Siliovic, thank you for jumping on, man. Oh, you're muted. Or no, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you can hear me. It's
Yep.
good?
Yep.
All right. Anyway, good to see you. I checked my
Yeah.
email and I thought, holy smokes, I can help you guys out. So,
Heck yeah. Great to have you on, man.
hey, thank you for the invite.
Yeah. We were just talking about insurance and special
Fun
assessments on
stuff.
some
Insurance.
condos. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys see in as far as insurance in the investor space right now? Because I had a surprise last month with my
Yeah, we
investment
did
Tell
too.
us
property.
more.
Yeah, go for it. Ed, yeah,
I
tell us what your deal was.
I actually had a rate reduction,
Oh,
and I've heard
Fun.
from a lot of investors. Yeah, it was only about $25 for the year. It was slight, so basically a wash. But I've heard with a lot of investors, because I've been kind of paying attention to what other investors are doing, what their rates, and I see a lot of rates that are just going up like crazy. So I was a little scared to respond to the email because I just basically got an email from NREGI,
yep.
yeah, that I had a rate change. So I gave him a call and I was like, well, like what's, and she's like, well, no, it's actually gone down $25 a year.
Hmm.
Well,
For
Well, that's
where was
lovely.
the property?
it was a single family, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath
In
in
Oregon?
the city. Yeah, in Eugene.
Mm.
Yeah. You know, yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's good news.
Yeah.
Amongst all the doom and gloom we're hearing constantly.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Huh.
Yep.
Crazy. Well, we've been on this topic for a while. Let's jump to the next one. Let's see. From New York Post, condemned California house, quote, unfit for human occupancy, unquote, gets 7 offers in sign of a cutthroat market. So it was, let's see, in San Jose, sold for $755,000, surpassing its asking price of $699. So that sounds like a hot market, huh?
It's really cheap for California. Anything in 600s in there, I mean, it's unheard of. So even
Yeah.
if it's a very small, tiny place, unfortunately, that market is a little bit off. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think sometimes they this is our pricing strategy. Again, we you know been in the real estate brokerage space for a while. Uh, and then that's the same strategies that banks often use. They underprice a property to make it more appealing and come at on a wider searches for
Mhm.
wider audience. And then it draws in a lot of the investors and a lot of bargain hunters. And then people get wrapped into bidding against each other. And essentially it goes over what the real true value is.
Yep.
So that's kind of like the mind games, there's, you come in there for a bargain, but then you get wrapped into a bidding war against somebody if you're really not logical person and approaching it very emotionally. You can get wrapped in and pay, a 700,000, 800,000 for something that's really worth only, 650 just because there's too many buyers that believe it might be something there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the strategy we use. And, the buyers and the buyer agents have to obviously know what the real value is and know what they're willing to pay you and set that gap so they don't get all wrapped up in the emotion, right?
Yeah, but that's, the thing is, it's really hard. We're human beings, right? There's very few people that have this analytical mindset that don't get wrapped into this. Especially when it comes like if you have a competitive streak, that's when the first sign of you should not be a buyer. Just because you need this analytical mindset person that's going to go and run the numbers and take a look at all the aspects and say no, no, go wait for the next one. But again, people want to win. They want to feel like they won, even though maybe winning the in wrong place and not winning the bid on something that makes sunk you the rest of your assets in.
Yeah, Lena,
Yep.
I'll tell you, I did one auction property and I realized I don't have that temperament. We got into it and my wife and I were texting back and forth where we are at the bid. We got the counter going, we're watching, and we had a strike number, and then it was like, all right, what if we just go a little bit above the strike number? And I'm like, this is it. I'm shutting my computer off after I put this last one in. We ended up getting it. And then I think in hindsight, we were probably bidding against the bank. I don't even think we were bidding against anyone else. If we would have just stayed where we were, I think they would have been forced to kind of come back around. It was like a 2 o'clock in the middle of the day type, online auction situation. But I just realized too, like, I'd rather negotiate where I have more leverage, and in those situations, you don't, right? Um,
Yeah.
Going back to the article real quick, it's interesting. If you could see the pictures, you'll see how dilapidated this building is. And it's crazy because they painted this bright teal color, and I'm like, you got something bad. You kind of want to blend in a little bit more, and these guys are like, look at this. And I will say it's 4,000 square feet, and when you have a good sized lot and you're in prime real estate location, that land has so much value. So I'm sure whoever bought it could care less of the building that's on there. They're either going to spend a lot of money renovating it or knock that thing down and build something best. So, as investors, we can read the headlines of being a condemned owner and all of that. But the truth of the matter is, if it's in prime location, some of us would salivate on an opportunity to come over there and get some prime real estate. And I'm sure this thing will be worth $2 or $3 million, in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a buddy of mine here in Denver does a lot of infill, high end stuff. And he'll go buy an old house he's paying 400,000 or 500,000 and, scrapes it just for the land. But then he'll build something that's, like you said, usually 1.2 million minimum,
Yeah.
up to like, I think he's done one that was 4 million. So that's a bargain for that land. Any
Yeah.
other comments on that?
Crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
My
That's
yeah.
truly sometimes value.
Did she freeze? Ed, were
She's
you saying?
frozen.
Yeah, Ed, what were you saying?
Yeah, I sold a house down the road, actually from my residence, and it was on some owner financing
More of
terms
a
because the property
liability.
couldn't.
Oh, um,
Oh,
yeah. Can you hear me? I
Yeah,
don't know if my internet's kind of
you
like
froze, so Ed
yeah
jumped in.
for us. Yeah. So I was saying sometimes with some pieces of land, depending on what was there before, you can get into trouble. Like let's say there was a gas station or something else that potentially could have the consequences with EPA. It may become a liability because cleanup costs may be exceeding what the value of the land is. Just kind of like on the side note, I'm sure that wasn't even close to the case, but it in general, land is great, especially in prime real estate. But again, you gotta know what was there before because you may end up always research, right?
Yep, totally.
mhm.
Ed, what
Yeah,
were you saying?
I sold a house about 2 years ago, down from where I live, and it was on owner financing with terms. The house sat for a bit. The owner, it was in the state, so they wanted top dollar for it, and ended up selling. We offered some terms, and it sold right away. But the gentleman that bought it, he's a commercial appraiser, and the house that was there, a decent house, right? It needed to be remodeled and quite a bit of work, um, but it was a nice house. He scraped the house off the lot, cleaned it off, and then put like a brand new, like a Toll Brothers, like not a real super high end house, but we sold a property for $1 million. So basically just dirt, it was a couple acres, highly desirable area, and it's listed now for 2 million. So just kind of thinking back, I know the market pretty well there. And of course he does too, because he's an appraiser. So he's done all his math and invested his time and money into that and liquidity into that project. But it's just crazy that, $1 million for a couple acres of land, so kind of dovetails into what you guys are talking about there.
Yeah. Any other comments on that one? If not, we'll jump to the next one from United States Real Estate Investor. Horrific housing bombshell report. U.S. leads world in unaffordable real estate, which is related to this last one because they list San Jose, LA, Honolulu, San Francisco, and San Diego among the top 10 most unaffordable markets. Let's see, I'm reading my other notes. Any jump in if you guys have comments on that. Here's other notes in here. The report uses the median multiple to gauge affordability, with Hong Kong topping the list at 16.7. And so just kind of for comparison, Pittsburgh is a median multiple of 3.1. So that's one of the more affordable ones.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hong Kong is 16.
I'm not familiar with any of those areas, and we're kind of like in Midwest that supposedly we have still affordable real estate.
Yeah.
Most of our like rehabs, we're dealing on the lower end just because that's where the majority of the need is. Luxury is always a little harder, but I'm feeling that even the lowest price range here is becoming not affordable. I like it's probably way more affordable than any other area in the United States, right? But we
Yeah.
have houses that literally a couple of years back were maybe, $80,000. Now that's minimal. We're going 190. I mean, that that is like a little 800 square foot, 700 square foot little shack, two bedroom, one bath. So that's kind of like unheard of in a way. Um, And then that's mostly a crisis in our salary, even though we're democratic state with the minimum wage of $15 an hour. It's not affordable to people that are just working a regular uh, low to mid jobs. So that's kind of my thought. And there has to be some more of a revolution in a way, in a kind of a different kind of like a shared house art is the shared communities, kind of like in Denmark, of like a large shared kitchen and then multiple families, cooking together, living together, and then share. Then they each have their small bedrooms and bath. So that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's where it's heading. Like I was saying earlier in the show, we're getting into co-living, renting by the room, creating affordability for people that, workforce, service industry people that can't afford a single, apartment, but they can afford to live together, like you're saying, like in Europe. So, Alina, you were cutting out, and it sounds like you're next to a waterfall or something. I don't know what that extra noise is.
Sorry, I'm gonna go see if I can find the space on the inside. This is what you hear is actually Lake Michigan. It's really pretty.
Weird.
But I'll see vision, yeah. As I'm being
All right.
fun of being in the middle.
All right, you're cutting out. Maybe your Wi-Fi's bad too. All right, let's take a break, hear from our next sponsor, and then we'll jump back into it.
Are you looking to elevate your business through exceptional content? Universe Media Publishing is your gateway to success. We understand that in the world of business, content is king, but not just any content. Your business deserves content that captivates, convinces, and converts your audience into clients. At Universe Media Publishing, we specialize in crafting SEO-rich web content, persuasive copywriting, and marketing copy that resonates with your audience. We don't just write, we engage, we connect, and we deliver results. Imagine your brand's voice amplified, your message crystal clear, and your presence dominating the digital landscape. That's the power of partnering with Universe Media Publishing. Don't let your business just blend in. Stand out, be heard, and make an impact. Connect with us at Universe Media Publishing, and let's turn your vision into reality. Visit universemediapublishing.com today. Your story, our expertise. Together, we'll create magic.
All right, back to the show from the street. Wells Fargo may pull the plug on a popular credit card. Did you guys read that article? Saying that the card allowed customers to pay rent without fees and earn rewards, but the bank misjudged user behavior and were expecting to make profits from interest and fees, but people were paying off their card right away, so they weren't making any money. So they're talking about pulling the plug on it. So I hadn't heard of that program. Had you guys?
I have not. I think it's interesting given how much consumer debt we have on credit cards, and that they were seeing basically the opposite. People putting rent on and paying it off immediately, which is kind of odd.
Yeah, that's definitely not the trend, it seems like.
No.
I am very surprised on that one as well. But I did not think it's actually something people do, paying rent on a credit card, but I kind of see how this would be a thing in the new environment. That is an interesting concept.
Yeah. Let's see.
I mean, I love it conceptually, right? They work with built technologies on it and allowed residents to pay their rent on there. But to your point, what they missed was that many people are used to actually paying their rent. So if you're smart, you can pay that, avoid kind of those fees. and it's a great way of making it. And credit card companies have banked on this for years, right? They lure you in with these 0%, fees for 12 months or whatever the offer is. If you pay it off, there's nothing to worry about. But then they wait for you to miss that, and then they hit you with the late fees, and they hit you with the other fees, right? And that's how they make their money. But it looks like residents have gained the system, figured out how to take advantage of it, use that to, really maximize their own dollars. And now Wells Fargo is stepping back and trying to figure out whether or not this is a program they want to continue. I say kudos to the residents who have figured out how to take advantage of the capital that's out there and allow themselves to be more efficient with their own dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I agree. That is definitely impressive. But still, I think credit card companies still made a profit because they still charge, processing fee at 3 to 5%, no matter what. So it's not like the loss. They just didn't make the big bang where they were expecting to get the 24%.
Yeah, the article goes on to say that they expected about 65% of the card usage to be non-rent related. So, and people weren't using it for that purpose. So for that, and I don't know the full terms, but for that, they misjudged the market. And I don't know what kind of research they did. I don't know what they looked into. But I think obviously they need to take a look in the mirror and say, okay, hey, we completely missed the mark here. What do we need to change? I'll say too, I think there's always this race with technology to implement new strategies and ideas. And it's great, right? It's great for us as consumers. But when you're racing to introduce something new, a lot of times they don't have the information, the focus groups, the research to really understand the marketplace. And there are a couple of industries that I have concern with, particularly in kind of the prop tech space, because a lot of these people are coming up with new businesses based on, real estate technology, but it's unproven in some capacities. And I know, again, savvy investors, savvy residents, if there is an opportunity to take advantage of it, they're going to figure it out. So I think they just missed the mark here.
Yeah. I mean, should we shed a tear for these credit card companies that screwed up?
Yeah, Wells Fargo, I mean, this is a company that, I think has gone through so many lawsuits, right? And didn't they have like $100 million like class action lawsuit not too long ago? So I don't think anybody's going to shed a tear for them.
Yeah. No. Well, let's jump to our next one from Benzinga. Las Vegas's pioneering cannabis-friendly hotel, the Lexi, quietly hits the market again. That's where Antonio, our producer, lives. He's new to there, so I don't know if he's heard of this hotel. Have you guys heard of this hotel or this concept?
No.
Yeah. I guess it was initially known as the Artisan. It was rebranded in 2023 by Elevations Hotels and Resorts. It has a filtration system and designed a designated cannabis-friendly floor, it says. So, interesting space.
Yeah,
I'm not too shocked.
Heard of that.
Living
That's
in-
very interesting.
I'm not too shocked living in Oregon. Everything's cannabis here.
Right. Yeah. I guess recreational cannabis was legalized in 2017 in Vegas. And I remember, so I'm in Colorado. Of course, everybody knows about our status. I can't remember when we legalized. I haven't heard of any cannabis-friendly hotels. I know of a church that was converted as like a cannabis church. I haven't been in there, but people get creative when they're high. Elena's laughing.
Talk about a higher power.
Yeah, good one. All right, we're on a roll. Let's see. Any other comments on that?
I'll say this. I'm big on experiences in the hospitality sector. So kudos to them for trying something different. Obviously, they haven't really figured out how to make this thing work here. I don't know. I don't even know how many people would want that. I'm curious about this air filtration system, but I don't know who wants to stay on the floor with everybody just smoking, right? But again, if you can create a unique experience, those are the things that people are looking for. I'm not sure if there's more involved with what the hotel offers or provides or creates, but kudos for the concept. Clearly, there's something that's not panning out right now, but maybe it's an idea that's a little ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Well, think about it. You don't need to buy your own. You just can go on the fumes of others.
Yeah. Contact.
Yeah, but in a hotel, I'm like staying there. Like, I don't want some random dude knocking on my door. You know how hard it is to get you out my room now?
Well,
Las
maybe
Vegas
that's
is
the
about
people
the
that really
experience.
want a company. Some people just thrive on like talking to strangers, and they just hate to be alone. Maybe that's one of those kind of situations. I personally wouldn't be one of those people. I'd like a hotel where nobody talks to me, but it's not everybody's jam.
Yep. All right. Our next article from United States Real Estate Investor. Real estate investors beware. $50 billion IRS crackdown declares war on wealthy tax cheats. I just heard about this recently, not related to this, but they're talking about partnership basis shifting. Are you guys familiar with that concept? Yeah, I hadn't either.
I think
No.
this they refer to cost basis shifting. So like I haven't heard of this, but I totally see how it could be because as you buying and selling real estate, you have to keep track of your cost basis to know how much capital gains you need to pay on the difference between your cost basis, right? So cost basis, for those who don't know, it's basically the purchase price, all of your closing costs, as well as all of the things that you put in as the capital improvements, right?
Mhm.
So it's not like your maintenance fees, like your filter or whatever. This is like you put in a new kitchen or a bathroom. So also your capital improvements. So all this adds into your cost basis. So I can totally see how somebody would create a multiple entities and essentially create a phantom expense to make your cost basis higher and therefore reduce the taxable capital gains, because your capital gains depending on your entity could be anywhere from 20 to, like in a C corp it is 21%, I believe, and an S corp or LLC it can run as high as 30%. However, if you have an instance where it just basically flows through taxation and then you have certain depreciation or some other kind of like operating expenses, and then you can deduct that off of it. So it can get uh, interesting, right? There is a ways to get it's totally legal right now. So I think that maybe they're going to look into clarifying something in a tax law to saying, hey, you cannot do the shifting from one company to the other, or sell your property from one to the other at whatever price that you want. So that's I'm not sure if you guys have any questions. I know I kind of ran real fast over the fairly convoluted tax scenario.
I just kind of dug into the article a little while you're talking. It says partnership basis shifting is a devious practice where assets are shuffled among related entities.
Yes, exactly what I just said. Yep.
Yeah. I was only half listening to you. Sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly. You basically have a couple of
Yep.
companies where but the problem is all that you can do is convert your profits from being taxed as a capital gains into being taxed like an ordinary income, because that's gonna have to be, unless you inflating your capital expenditures somehow, But even that, let's say you have created an LLC that is your contractor company, your own contracting company that does all the improvements, and they bill your other entities that is a real estate holding to, let's say, for all the services of capital movements like the roof, the siding, whatever. But the thing is, for the company that is billing you, your LLC, for example, that is still an income. Yes, you're going to have your regular operating expenses in there as well. But however, whichever way twist it, you still converting your capital gains into your ordinary income for that LLC, kind of like a gross profits, and that you can further reduce it by, deducting all the allowable deductions in there. But I mean, yeah, it's still a good technique to pay, let's say, maybe 15% versus 30%. It's completely legit.
I did not know that.
Yeah, thank you. Should we jump to the next one? From New York Post. San Francisco home in trendy Nabe hits market for $488,000. Buyers can't move in until 2053. Right? I guess it's they have some interesting tenant occupancy laws there. So I guess from what I gather, and let me back up too, the rent payments on this place in San Francisco are $416 a month. But apparently, it sounds like there's tenants in place, from what I gather, and unless those tenants moved out, the new buyers could not move in until 2053. That's how I read it. I don't know.
So they're basically buying in a property with the negative cash flow in a way, because they're gonna, well, unless they're buying it cash, in either case, they're probably still negative cash flow because you still have taxes and insurance you need to pay on the property.
Yeah.
As you holding it, and then you just counting in on that asset appreciating enough. That's another speculation investment / non-investment technique that I believe is definitely a no, at least for my portfolio, because you gambling on the fact that real estate gonna go up. But in my experience, as it in general overall goes up, but you are investing it not in a portfolio of real estate, you're investing in one property. And if there's anything happens next to the property, let's say they build a new jail right next door, or a cemetery, or put in some kind of cell towers that's going to degrade your place. And again, they'll do special assessments, right? And that's going to increase the monthly assessment and therefore reduce your market value per unit. So that isn't an investment. So there's still whoever is the buyers, they're just gambling on the fact that everything is rising and therefore this will be. That's my 5 cents here.
Yeah. Any other
San
comments?
Francisco is crazy, just crazy.
Yeah.
With some of these rules, I mean, that's one of those situations where you got to have a lot of patience, obviously, or the right business plan. Maybe you can negotiate with that resident and see if you can work something out. I will say, a friend of mine here in Cincinnati, he's got a pretty decent following on Instagram, and he posted a video about how to get squatters out of his home. And he said, sometimes we just like to bring our snakes to the property, and they just stay there. And guess what? I show back up to get the snakes the next day, and squatters are gone. So I'm like, I don't know the legality of it, but if they're squatters and you can't kick them out, but maybe you just introduce a little pet snake for them.
I love that.
Hopefully you bring in 17, you're going to take back all 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he said he brought in like 15 snakes or something like that. He's like, yeah, there's one or two missing, but we'll figure that out later.
Oh boy.
That is so funny. Awesome. Well, hey, let's jump to our final fun extra news item. Gen Z is, this is from Yahoo Finance. Gen Z is increasingly becoming NEETs, NEETS, by choice, not in employment, education, or training. That's what NEETS stands for. It's saying about 20% of 15 to 24-year-olds worldwide are NEETs.
And what does that NEET stand for again? I've never heard.
Not in employment, education, or training. Basically, they're just checked out. Economic challenges such as low wages, high debt, and inflation make adulthood milestones like home ownership seem unattainable, it says. So they're just checking out. I don't know what the hell they're doing. Moving in with their parents? Like, what? You gotta.
We call those freeloaders. Is that what they're called? Freeloaders?
Yeah, I'd call it that. So, yeah.
Oh.
NEETs. That doesn't sound neat to me. That sounds like a cop out.
I think they came up with the title.
Yeah.
Wow.
Craziness.
You know what? I haven't heard of that, but I kind of totally see how this would become a thing because there is growing conversations. I have two teenagers, right? I have a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. I mean, there's a lot more kids still at that age is like, well, we don't want to go to college. It's a waste of money. So there is like no future there. Then as far as employment, what are you going to get? You're going to go only like minimal wage, and you're just going to work paycheck to paycheck, and you can't even afford to rent on that. So why even bother if you can just maybe apply for some kind of like non-employment or something and just basically kind of float on the minimal and not do any work? Right. So the system itself is designed for this. It's encouraging that kind of behavior because there's really no other option. There's no perceivable good future that they can see as an inspiration, saying, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get all this, bigger house and nice car and all this vacation. They just don't see a light in the end of the tunnel. So why even do the work? So, I mean, the system is set this way that, yeah, I can totally see how this would be a thing.
Yeah.
Elena, to build on that, it's interesting too because the report is a global report, right? So it's not just U.S. Kids, and they're categorizing it between 15 and 24-year-olds. So you have historically the kids maybe want to take that that year off to go explore the world or backpack across Europe or whatever the case may be. And, building on what you're saying, I think so many young people have a hard time, like seeing the life. And I also think we got to get into social media because for that age group, right, 15 to 24, how many of them are going on and watching people driving Lambos and doing all sorts of stuff? And they're like, oh man, the real world's starting to kick in. Like that stuff's not attainable to me, at least not in the near future. Like I'm going to have to go get a regular job, start at the entry level and grind for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And it's overwhelming to them because they're coming from, maybe high school where they were the guy or the gal and had things going, and real life punches them. And I think everyone goes through a maturation process where you got to figure out who you really are, right? And it's tough for a lot of the young people, especially when you're living your life in the presence of social media and living out in the public. And I can understand why some folks are saying, "Hey, I don't want I don't want to go get a job that I feel is quote unquote beneath me. Whereas I know my generation, there was a grind mentality, right? You work 2-3 jobs, you're a waiter at night, you got a day job, you got a little side project. And a lot of these people, they don't want that image of them out there in the universe. So it's tough for them. And quite frankly, they just soft, a lot of them are soft and they get pampered a lot. They get diagnosed with everything in the world. And I'm not belittling or minimizing that, but I also think that the real world is hard and the real world doesn't care about any of that stuff. Like, you just got to figure it out and suck it up, buttercup, and get it cracking. So I think that mentality has been lost on a lot of people, where it's just easier to just blame the surrounding social media, everything else. And their self-image and self-worth has been tied up in it. So it's hard for them to see that traction and get something going.
Yeah,
Good point.
you're so right. You're so right.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
doesn't really speak of them just, being soft, even though that is a thing too, right? Everybody else is in charge of the way how I feel, right? That's the new mentality that's coming out in high schools. You cannot say anything because you may offend somebody else. So there isn't really an ownership of how you feel there, or how that what you do is affecting what you get. That isn't what they're teaching in schools, that somebody else is in charge of how you feel, somebody else have to be conscious of your feelings, somebody else have to be providing you a good job, somebody else have to provide you opportunities. So this is a new mentality that they're teaching in those establishments. So that is essentially what is transpiring in all of those children, because they're still going to be children for forever in this regard. And our generation wasn't like that at all, right? We were just like, you are in charge, you in charge of your feelings. Somebody said some bad things to you, well, get over it. Somebody is like, you want to buy something, go get a job. So there was different message that we were getting versus what they're getting right now in all those establishments, right? The colleges and then schools. They're like, well, this government is bad, this government doesn't do anything for you. Oh, this is not what government is for. But that they're teaching all those things, and therefore this is the product of our new parenting, social society parenting, those kind of children. And then they really don't see now, with the new economy, they don't really see how they can even make that happen, right? Not that only they're not taught, but also being like there, you have so many more adults that have a lot of skill set, that essentially have a better work ethic, than they can take all those jobs. I totally see how this trend is gonna just continue more and more. I don't know what you guys think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we got to wrap up. Sorry to cut everybody off. John's got to run. So that ends the news portion of the show. I'd like to thank our sponsors, United States Real Estate Investor Advertising and Universe Media Publishing. Thanks to you guys as our guests. John, since you got to jump off, do you want to go ahead and kind of give a way for people to connect with you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, first of all, thanks for having me here and checking out this conversation. If you'd like to learn more about us, you can go to KasmanCapital.com. We basically work with everyday professionals who want the benefits of investing in real estate and owning real estate without the headaches of being a landlord themselves. So learn more at KasmanCapital.com. You can also check out our podcast, Multifamily Insights, anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Fantastic. Ed, you want to jump in, and then Alina?
Sure. If you want to reach out to me, simply just jump on to our website, theoperativegroup.com. And we keep track of all of our messages there, and that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. So.
Very good. Thanks. Alina?
Okay, well, if anybody wants to reach to me, it's Alina at idxam.com. And we're here in Chicagoland area doing real estate brokerage, investments, and I also do software as a service for real estate agents and lenders. So thank you
Yeah.
for having me. It was really fun. Always loved having those fun conversations on random topics.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you guys jumping on last minute. Well, thanks. Again, I'm your host, James Brown, and I show people how they can make safe, secure returns through pre-vetted passive investments. To get opportunity alerts, go to legacywealthcollective.com. Fill out the form to join our private investor club. Also, a huge thanks to Antonio Holman, our producer at United States Real Estate Investor. Follow and subscribe to This Month in Real Estate Investing on YouTube at youtube.com/at United States REI or your favorite podcast app. And if you run across any interesting news, events, or good guest suggestions, feel free to share by emailing Antonio at UnitedStatesRealEstateInvestor.com. And remember, when one door closes, another door opens to financial freedom. Thanks, guys.